Good morning. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. Welcome to everyone who's here to visit. I'm so glad to have you. This week I'm kind of doing a little bit of a mix-up of different books that I have been reading. Some I'm finished and some I'm not. Some I am not finished with because some of you may know we're headed on the road, and so I'm just trying to bring things to a conclusion. And I just remembered something. Right. My intention for April was, no, where are we? We're May. My intention was to read all the books that people had loaned me, and I thought there were quite a few, but when I took an actual look through it, I had several books that people had given to me in order to pass on, and I thought they were in my reading pile, but really they were in my give it to, there's a couple of little, library, what are those called? Library things on people's front lawns and so on. So there are several in my neighborhood. So I'm supposed to drop them off there. Or if they're in really good shape, I take them to the library down in Liverpool where they don't have a very big budget. And so if they're a new recent release, then I will take them to donation there. So consequently, I only had one at the end that I needed to read. And that was a quick read because I already read it. The Distant Hours, a novel by Kate Mortin, author of The Forgotten Garden. And I loved this book and I loved The Forgotten Garden. And so since I didn't read it, I don't remember what it was about. You're going to have to look that one up for yourself if you're interested. But I did like it. Okay. The other one I read that... No, I guess there were two, because this one has sort of been on my shoulders, if you like, for a little while. A dear friend of mine suggested that I might like this, and The Illuminator is a novel by Brenda Rickman, vantrese, and it takes place in the Middle Ages, sort of, 1370s, sort of? Yeah, no, 1379, and so this is important to know if you've got any kind of sort of medieval sense of who actually was alive when, because what I've discovered over time is that these family names keep repeating. Like, I'm sure those of you who pay attention have figured that out. But it's really the people in the background when the family names continue to just kind of crop up again and again. And so there's a Henry de Mence, I think his name is, who was significant in some of the Reformation churches that were starting to take hold. And this book in the Middle Ages is taking place at the time when the Bible is being translated into English. And so we have someone who is the Illuminator, who has a daughter, Rose, and he has made a deal with a local monastery that he will illuminate the pages of a Bible, but he cannot go into a monastery because he's got his daughter Rose with him, she's coming on to 13, 14, around that age, so she is not allowed in the monastery. So he gets billeted at a local rich lady's house, and she's a widow, and so there are a couple of people kind of sniffing around in the background wanting her property, and she was able to get a prenuptial that allowed her properties to return to her in the case of her husband's death. So it's not a murder mystery. Hubby died in the war somewhere. So that's kind of the setting, and there are a number of characters that could be interesting. The friend who loaned this to me loves medieval history, and at the time that she was reading it, she was really sort of trying to get a sense of the environment, because she is an author herself and has finished writing a medieval book that I will be talking about when I get back from my trip. And so I think this book appealed to her because of the setting, because of the details. There are a lot of details in here, and if you like that kind of thing, this is a great book. But I like a bit more character. I felt that the characters kind of ran alongside of each other, and although they intersected, I didn't get a great sense of the feelings in behind that. I mean, we were told that we would see somebody crying, but I I felt it was more of a superficial overview of the characters, and it took me forever to get to the point of the plot, because there's a priest that's murdered fairly early on, and nobody's really too worried about it. The sheriff kind of thinks, oh, well, okay, yeah, another dead priest, because the Reformation Bible stuff is starting to trickle in, and so he thinks it's a situation for the church to deal with, and the church decides to keep mum on it until it becomes, politically expedient to make use of this murder. So we don't really see that come back into play, and I think it was around page 145 where I thought to myself, is there a plot? And then a couple pages on it, it starts to move a little bit more, but I don't think it's really a plot so much as a series of events. And and the ending left me just kind of annoyed, but I think that there are a lot of people who would really enjoy this book. I think anyone who likes that kind of manor house, big environment, big cast of characters, lots of setting details will enjoy this book. It's just, the dead priest barely comes back into the story. So I didn't give it high marks, or as high as I thought I would going into it. So that is the end of the books that I had an obligation to read. And then my other little task is to try and get through as many library books as possible, because some of them I've been on a waiting list for ages. And I just wondered if I turned on the button to say hit play. Yes, I was recording. Yay! It's been one of those kinds of mornings. It's like every Tuesday morning I get up and there's a construction guy outside in a big red vest, and he's got this sign, stop, slow, and I think, this is the only day of the week where I actually have any kind of like real programming, scheduling kind of things, and I keep thinking, is this a sign from the universe that I should slow down on my only activity of the week? So anyways, the universe can go screw itself. All right, I spoke about this one at the end of last week, The Language of Ghost by Heather Fawcett, and I had just started it, had just read the prologue, and it did not disappoint. I really loved this one. It was so charming, and kind of wackadoodle. I love a good wackadoodle, and there's a dragon in here who's so old, he's basically a rug. He shows up once in a while for a chin scruff. But all he can do now, he's so old, is just kind of puff a little bit of smoke. Like, so 3 kids have been forced into exile, and the eldest is Julian, and he is about 16 at the time of the exiling. His mom, the queen, has been murdered, and so the person who's doing the coup wants to get the 3 children and kill them off. So from that point of view, there are no punches held back in terms of what are the goals of the evil people. However, the sister of Julian, whose name is Noah, and the littlest one, Miata, whose nickname is Might, they are more on the peaceful side of things. And each one of them, Julian and Might, have magical powers, and Might, being so young, is struggling to control them, and because they're in exile, there isn't really a teacher, and whenever she gets really frustrated, things blow up around her. Luckily not herself. So she's getting tutored by her older brother. Noah doesn't seem to have any magical powers, and so that's part of her development process, because how is she going to be a member of the family without magic? And so she becomes a really intuitive strategizer. She collects a lot of information, a lot of observations. She keeps it in a chronicle. She's got a kind of brain that can, compute different points of information and come into some kind of a game plan very quickly. Her brother, on the other hand, is like impulsive, shoots out a magic spell and 7 trolls fall down. It's so they're very different, very, very different. And Might is just this really sweet little 7-year-old who's sort of on the cusp of being sort of a very childish child and a fairly precocious 7 to 10-year-old age. She's sort of in that funny little cusp. And and then there's some secondary characters, and there's a search for lost magical languages. The coolest thing about this book is that they're not on ship. I don't know whether this is going to work. I'm going to try and... They're on an island. Julian has freed an island, and they are sailing it. And their captain of the island is an ex-pirate. So that's the other reason Julian has taken on board, so to speak, lots of people who have questionable backgrounds because he can use their expertise. So he's seen to be a dark magician because he looks at people for who they are rather than, and what they can do rather than, what's their family background and, how rich they are, that kind of thing. So he's upsetting the social order. That's a lot. That doesn't actually really get to the plot. The real plot is that they're on the run and they're searching for these magical languages which may or may not help them to return to the throne. So really enjoyed it. Super, super good. There's one more that I would like to catch up on is the Ember and the Ice Dragons. And then there's that audiobook that I don't remember the title of, but I gave up on just because it's audio. All right. Another one that was recommended to me by someone of you guys is Mooncakes. And this is a story about Tam, who is a werewolf, and I've forgotten her name. Nova, who is a young witch with hearing disability, or hearing, she needs hearing aids, and this hearing situation has, how does it work now? She is an orphan and she's living with her two grandmothers, and her parents are ghosts, and the hearing aids and the death of her parents has meant that she has stayed with her grandmothers longer than is normal for a witch. Normally a witch would go off to get some life experience, but not in their hometown, so that they're not judged for their peculiar behavior. I think that's how it goes. Anyways, Noah and Tam were childhood playmates and, really sweet on each other. And Tam had to leave because his werewolfness was becoming more apparent and he was afraid of exposure, as well as a stepdad who wanted to harness his werewolf powers. So he leaves, and then as he's a teenager, he comes back. These guys are sort of reconciled. I mean, they're not mad at each other or anything. They're reunited. There we go. And it's a nice little story. It's sweet. There's some chaos. There's some conflict. I don't adore the drawing style, except that it's very communicative. I think we kind of roll through, there's a bit of repeating itself in the story. There's one character who I really wanted to get to know better. It's an uncle, Uncle Pete, I think. Where did he go? I just had his picture of this. Oh, he's got the head of a bird. And I'm just thinking, how do you go through Maine, USA with the head of a bird and not get turned into a trophy? So anyways, I liked it. It was nice. It was a fast little read. I read it in about 2 evenings just before bedtime. All right, the other two things that I'm trying to catch up on, because it took me forever for them to come into the house, and I don't know how I feel about them, and I probably won't bring them back to you. So this one is called Big Magic, Creative Living Beyond Fear by Elizabeth Gilbert, who was the author of Eat, Pray, Love. Now, I didn't love Eat, Pray, Love, and I don't think I've read anything else that she's written. No, I haven't. But this was recommended to me by a dear friend who knows I've been struggling with some other stuff in my studio work, and she thought this was Big Magic Cracks Open a World of Wonder and Joy. I don't know, when you're in a pissed off mood, do you really want to have your world cracked open? I mean, sometimes you just want to hang around and be pissed off. So anyways, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy this book or not. There's other people have obviously liked it because there's lots of little dog ears in it. And I read the first chapter and it was nice. I think if you're really ready for not, I don't know, okay, so here's too much information. When I get in one of those moods, there's a certain point where I kind of like stomping around and just wallowing in my own drudgery. And so that's generally when I can start to feel the sort of a bit of anger building and thinking, I don't really want to be down here, but I still need to kick that dead dog a few more times before I'm ready to leave. And so I think that's my girlfriend is recognizing that I am getting ready to leave that place of, ugh. And there really isn't a word in the English vocabulary that describes, ugh. So anyways, that's where I am, and that's why she recommended this book, and that's why I'm reading it, and it's brought to me with love. The other one that I have been waiting for umpteen months, this is a nonfiction book. It's called Let Me Be Frank, a book about women who dress like men to do shit they weren't supposed to do, by Tracy Dawson, illustrations by Tina Berning. I really wanted this book. It's supposed to be about a whole bunch of women that have flown under the radar, so to speak, from current research and the effort to try and raise women up who have been unaccounted for in different parts of. So there's people here I've never heard of that, like Pili Hussein, Tarpe Mills, Catalina de Rose, Irasso. Iranian women sneaking into stadiums. So I just thought that it would be, and they're not necessarily cross-dressing. I don't know why, that's why I'm not 100% sure why the title is such as it is, but there are some women who cross-dressed in order to get where they wanted to go. But some of them were quite flamboyantly women. Anyways, the thing I'm not sure about is the tone of the writing style of the author. It's a little bit tough. It's a little bit coarse, and it has a sense of humor that's it's not off-putting. It's not going to wear well. I think this book is not going to last as long as the stature of the women that it's referring to. I think that there's another book's going to come along and do a more serious approach to this. Maybe it's okay that it's kind of funny and sardonic, but yeah, I don't know. It's just I feel like these women deserved something better than smart-ass flippancy. However, it's still funny, and I'm still getting to know stuff that I don't know. I suspect I'll be finished with it by the end of the week. I guess the other thing I don't like about it is the cover. It feels a little bit like the Famous Women for Dummies kind of title. So that's that. The other book I picked up, which I've just started, and it's Britt-Marie Was Here by Fredrik Blackman, who was the author of A Man Called Ove, which I liked as a book and did not watch as a movie. I just generally don't watch books that have been translated into movies. Britt-Marie was here. Okay, so he also wrote, which is the real reason I went after this book, is my grandmother, how did that go? My grandmother sends her regards and apologies, which I really enjoyed. That's about a 7-year-old who's been given a whole bunch of tasks to visit people that her grandmother used to have a relationship with, and her job is to get to know these people and pass on messages from her grandmother who has died. So this is a different kind of character altogether. Britt-Marie is a fussy, passive-aggressive busybody, but hidden inside is a woman who has bigger dreams and a warmer heart than anyone around her imagines. She finds herself for the first time in decades having to deal with things on her own, and she's in a small town of big-hearted misfits, and she's a real misfit herself. Just in the first 30, 40 pages that I've read, she's managed to be socially awkward in some pretty spectacular ways, and she was a stay-at-home mom and a stay-at-home housewife, and I think the stay-at-home part is, the biggest part of the phrase to pay attention to. She's become invisible, and is sort of in deference to her husband, who over time doesn't see her either. And so at a certain point something happens and she has no choice but to face a new reality. So far I'm enjoying it, and I expect I'll I'll really love it. So I'll get back to you next week with my crazy planning and antics and that are coming up for May and June. And I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true. Oh yeah, so the other thing I meant to say way at the beginning is I'm filming in the kitchen because the lighting is so crazy right now. It's like got that sharp. No, I don't want to bother talking about that. I'll edit that out. So, I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.